Hey everybody, how you guys doing today? Let's go. Got a lot to go over here. Gonna wait till some more people jump in here real quick. Got some more fraud to expose here. It's just never ending with these guys, but there's gonna be 2024 should be a really interesting year here. We got a lot of things that are collapsing in front of them, a lot of things that they were able to steal billions from that are going away. But I'm gonna wait 1 second here, let some people jump in. Hope everyone's having a good day. Now I'm going live here quick on Twitter. Alrighty, so let's just get started here. I don't want to wait too long. So one of the things I wanted to get into first here is Dave put up this announcement yesterday. It's from NextBridge. It talks about how NextBridge actually was approached by short sellers to buy more shares that were shorted than that was actually registered. So this is the case. This is another big win for retail. We're still keeping an eye on that case. Dave is as well. But one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this up is we were talking about a lawsuit last time, and I'm talking to Dave, and Dave was actually part of that lawsuit that we talked about earlier, where brokers are now being held liable. And I'm trying to talk to Dave. He doesn't want to do a space call or anything like that. But we're DMing back. I want to DM him back and forth, and keep asking him more about this. I don't want to just rush into a lawsuit. That's the way we don't win. So trying to talk to the right people to see if this is actually a route we should take or go down. But one of the things I wanted to show everybody, just to get into, the never-ending corruption that is the government and their attorneys and their... This was released yesterday. FDIC attorney pleads guilty to fucking being a pedo. Like, what is going on? Never-ending, dude. FDIC's attorney that has been with them is a pedophile. It's like never-ending shit with these guys. There was a video going around. I didn't get to listen to it all, so I didn't want to play it on this. But there was a BlackRock or Blackstone employee. I got to look back at it. But he even got caught looking at pedophile stuff. Like, what is fucking going on, dude? Like, these are the people that are running the world right now. It is absolutely ridiculous, dude, how many fucking people are involved in that type of shit. Like, what is happening in this country? I already showed you guys over almost $1 trillion was accredited to human trafficking last year. That's insanity. Like, what the fuck is going on here, dude? We really need to get this under control. This shit is fucking insane. It's like every other new day there's some new government employee doing some fucking child pornography or something. Like, what the fuck, dude? But this is something I really wanted to get into right here really quick. So, do you guys remember when Ken Griffin talked about how we were the ones fucking up pension funds, teachers' salaries, teachers' retirements? It was us destroying them and us holding and not doing what their algos say should happen and blah, blah, blah. Well, this was a lawsuit that came out in September. And I wanted to show you guys this a little bit more here. So what ended up happening is you have Bank of America, JP Morgan, Credit Suisse, BlackRock, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, all the top 10 banks, all the top 10 criminals, the banking cartel. And I've called them the banking cartel for a while. And we're going to break down this lawsuit a little bit, and it's going to be funny because you're going to listen to the words that they say here. And just to show you what I've been talking about, they talk about how this was run like, this, what we're going to break into, these were victims of cartel. They were run like the five families. Act 1 was run like a mafia. It was run by 5 crime families. So we'll get into this. So basically what was going on is you had all of these big banks, and they basically were fucking up pension funds, stealing from them, not giving them the returns they should have, cornered the industry. Basically, they ran the stock borrowing program, and we're going to get into this down the road because this all matters. On this company actually got hacked the other day here, and it ends up dealing with the CNS program. And this God, the amount of fraud with these guys, it's just ridiculous. So when they can't just do it on their own individual level, they come together and they make shell companies, which we'll get into here in a second. And then they make shell corporations, and then they do illicit stuff through those shell corporations, and then they just sell them after they take all these loans, fines, hits. They don't care. Kind of like the buy now, pay later thing, which we'll get into in a minute. But if you guys come down here, what it ends up doing is basically these guys would go in, and any time you would have pension funds and all these people would go out and they would get stocks, and then they'd go and put them into the stock borrow program so they could get returns and give to their investors. Well, what these guys ended up doing is they went out and they closed down any single type of company that would deal had anything to do with stock borrowing, and basically made it to where they ran a monopoly through this. This company basically owned everything, and now they're running trillions of dollars a month. Trillions of dollars a month run through this program. Okay, so that's how big of a scale this is. This is insanity. Now, what they did is they sat there, and anyone that would give out a higher rate of any type of way, they would destroy that company. And then they would go ahead and corner that market and basically cheapen the shit out of pension funds. So the rates they should have got were basically nothing compared to what they should have got. But then the fees they were charging these pension funds were way higher than they should have been charging them, because they monopolized the market. They're basically stealing from pension funds, and this ended up totaling to a sum of $9 billion in 1 year. So people sitting there like, it's no big deal. It was billions of dollars that should have went into pension funds returns for you. Instead, it went to banks. $9 billion. So this is a big deal. Now, of course, in the lawsuit, they only end up paying $500 million. But when you go ahead and read this stuff, and I'm going to go ahead and post this here. Let me go ahead and post this down so people can actually read this. But when you go ahead and look at what the lawsuit and what they're talking about here, I mean, dude, these guys were literally threatening people. They were threatening companies that were working with the pension funds and all these. We'll never do business again with you if you don't go after this guys. And they were basically short and distorting everything and everyone. And they basically, like I said, they were completely controlling these pension funds. It was insanity. And then everything you read, when you read about this, it talks about how it was a banking mafia. It was ran like a mafia. You had the 5 top banks, ran everything, controlled everyone, just like we're doing in the stock market. Just how Ken Griffin said, it's an efficient stock market when we have 8 people that can control stock prices and put them where we believe that us 8 firms should put them at. Like I said, it's a complete fucking joke. But this ended up coming out to $9 billion annually. Now, I want you guys to understand this started going on in 2002 is when this company first started. And they said that this started going on. Just this lawsuit said that this has been going on since 2018. So, we only have $36 billion that you guys should have had more in your retirements that the pension fund should have earned. No big deal. $36 billion. Like I said, this is a complete fucking joke. And then what they did, for example, one of the banks in the lawsuit ended up taking 65% of that. So you had super high ups. And of course, we all know who that bank is. Do you really want me to say their name? I'm sure you can guess without me saying the name. JP Morgan. Like always, classic. But when Credit Suisse is involved, fucking JP Morgan's involved, Goldman Sachs is involved, Bank of America, it's a scam. It's fraud. And that's all there is to it. But just so you guys know that they have taken billions and billions and billions from your pension funds. Billions from them. Anyone that would talk about it, anyone that would try to stand up for it, they would just destroy those companies. They would eliminate them as a threat. I mean, this is like, how is this not just prison? This is so fucking dumb. And then you guys, here's what always happens, of course, And then when you come down and you read the bottom, the banks, for their part, deny any and all wrongdoing as they sign an acceptance waiver and consent, of course, God forbid. But they go, we didn't do any of these claims. We didn't do it. But instead of going through a lengthy trial, we're going to pay out $500 million. You're telling me you thought the trial was gonna cost more than just giving up $500 million? You're not gonna give out $500 million if you think you can beat the lawsuit. You know you're trapped. You know you have everybody out there, and it's like I said over and over. The word cartel comes up. Cartel comes up. Cartel comes up. Cartel comes up. That's all they do. And I've told you guys forever, the cartel didn't go away. They just ended up putting on suits, and then they got a job at the bank. And then they ended up learning how to bribe the right politicians. Now, I'm just going to skip to this for a second because this came out the other day, and I listened to it, and it was kind of like, what the fuck? But we've known this is going on with politicians for quite a long time, where they're sitting there and they'll threaten them or try to buy them or whatever. Well, okay. They know the guy who bribed this girl. They know the guy who talked to this girl and basically talked about threats and things like this. So if they know who did it, why is this guy not in fucking jail? Oh God, something happened with my computer here. I gotta fix this. My sound card or something broke out. I can't. Basically, this guy here, he talks about, hey, how much money would it cost for you to drop out of the race? How much? Here, I'll send you the link so people can actually listen to it. But it's a fucking gong show. It's the same exact thing where these guys can sit there and talk to these politicians. Hey, play ball. If you play ball, we'll give you, name your price. No? Well, if you don't want to do that, he literally says, there's some very powerful people out there that don't want you to do it. And then he even talks. The reason I wanted to play this is he literally says the word, the cartel didn't go away. I know they didn't. You're right. The cartel did not go away. They literally became the bangers. That is what they did. It is fucking insanity. But anybody needs to talk about when any of these guys talk about fucking pension funds, look what they're doing to the pension funds. The first thing you guys say now is Equilend. Well, what about the $38 billion in Equilend you guys stole? We're not going to talk about that. You don't think that affected the retirement system? You don't think that hurt them? That's just one area. How much have they hurt the pension funds going after those stocks that they invested in as well, or that they borrowed the company of Equilend? Again, you guys, this processes trillions of dollars a month. Now, one of the things I've been talking about for quite a while, the first thing I heard about when I heard about these things in a firm, and there might be a play there down the road, is one of the things that these companies do, and this is a giant time bomb. Dude, this is insanity, and I'm going to show you the back end of this because it's just ridiculous. And now the time is coming. Nobody's going to make payments, and you're going to see your firm start to get plastered because they got what goes on with these companies, these buy now, pay laters, is completely ridiculous. One of the things that most people do not know is they don't affect your credit score. If you don't pay them back, it doesn't affect your credit score in most cases. They might show up, but they don't affect the credit score yet. So in other words, people are able to take these loans out with a zero credit check, okay? They don't actively affect credit scores yet. But right now, over the holidays, I showed you guys how much of that was buy now, pay later. It was like 80%, which is fucking insanity. Well, all of those people now, here's that time bomb, they don't know how they're going to pay it. When they all went in their shopping spree last year, which I was looking at that, and I was showing you guys, look at Black Friday's numbers. They were insane. The amount of people bought buy now, pay later was insanity. And now you're adding it to Walgreens, Walmart. Well, you already know what kind of problems Walmart has, and you guys see the videos of a lot of the Walmart shoppers. Well, if you have no credit check on these guys, and they can get 4, and if you look at most of these things, websites, it says, well, you know what, if you just fail to do payments and all this stuff, eventually we'll just not let you have another loan. That's like your big repercussion. Okay, so basically, you're saying buy now, pay later. Everybody owes me this shit. I'm going to take a whole bunch of bad debt. I'm going to have all of these board members take massive bonuses because the stock jumped. So now what these guys are going to do is the stock jump. We're going to pay ourselves out. We're going to sell a whole bunch of stock. We're going to make millions of dollars. We're going to let a firm get fucked up because who cares? We don't give a shit. Eventually, we'll just say, well, we're going to have to file bankruptcy. But in the meantime, how much did they make? How much money did they make? Millions and millions and millions. And when they file bankruptcy through the company, the fucking board members still get to keep their money. They don't give a shit. They make these type of companies knowing they're going to fail, but they don't care. They're going to milk and squeeze it out for every single penny. And then in a year or two when they go down, oh, well, I'm a multi-millionaire. It's a fucking gong show. Like I said, these things are so stupid. The fact that they even allowed them to get as big as they did. And at a time in the world where credit card debt in November broke $1 trillion, it's went up since. So you have like 1.1 trillion in fucking credit card debt. And now people are going to buy now, pay laters. And now nobody can do their buy now, pay laters on top of it. At a time when they say, don't worry, inflation's under control, everything's good. Well, look at your consumer index, consumer price index. Your average cost is just fucking skyrocketed. It's still up massively. And inflation's back on the way. And people are expecting rate cuts? Okay. Good luck with those. Middle class is basically eliminated. If you did the math, I had a video I was going to show you, but my stupid sound card broke. So like I said, I can't, for some reason it's not letting me play through anything right now. I've tried my speakers. I've tried everything. I don't know why it's doing this. I'll have to figure it out later here. But I was going to play you this video and it talked about, he did math. He broke down the whole bunch, all of math and how much, your yearly income was for a house, a car back in 1950 to 70 to 80 to all this stuff. Basically, to have your salary equal what would be considered middle class in 1950, you would need to today make $173,000 for your money, your buying power of your money to equal what it did in 1950 to get a house and a car. The average was $420,000 for the car or the house, and it was like almost $30,000 for the car. And your buying power needed to be about 2.5% of that. So it was, like I said, you need to make $173,000 to be considered middle class compared to what you would be considered middle class in 1950. How many of you make that? None. So you're all technically considered lower class at this point by a lot, because $173,000 a year is quite a fucking bit of money to be making. Not many people, as we've shown you over every single chart, over every metric, nobody's making that. You have nobody, a very few percentage of your population makes that. So basically you have now officially destroyed your middle class. And now your middle class is already borrowing and borrowing. Everybody's buying habits are going to have to completely change, and they know that people aren't going to do that. So that is why this buy now, pay later is blowing up, and they're pushing out every single way that they can, because if we're not able to keep buying as middle class, what have I told you? All of their businesses are going to crumble. They're all going to go under. And now what makes these guys rich? Their businesses. Well, if their businesses are going under, and they already owe all of this money, because we've already shown you guys over and over, they're all living on credit. I said it's just a ticking time bomb, and they're adding more and more little fucking programs and more little this and more temporary band-aids. But now people aren't going to be able to pay these back. Now, on top of that, we're going to get over into this in a minute, but you got student loans repaying. We already went over how 60% of people started making payments. 40% of people with a student loan haven't made a payment since November. They just told them to go fuck themselves. They're literally going to default on their student payment. How many people have graduated since then? I mean, like I said, They don't give a shit. They're going to say, what are you going to do? I have my degree. Give me bankruptcy. Do whatever you want to do. That's where people are getting to. I'm not paying this shit back, and that's why you're seeing Biden have to do a whole bunch of these loan forgivenesses. But the problem is there's tons of these banks that are still holding those. They're going to take a ton of losses on those as well. So there's bombs coming in these guys at every single sector. Now, one of the things I wanted to show you guys, because this is just the stupidest thing I've ever read, and it's like, okay, if these guys could figure this out, how easy is it for all of these regulators, government officials, if they even gave a fuck in any way, shape, or form? How easy is it for these guys to go after these companies? Look at this. You have 2,000 shell companies that have a director that is older than 123 years old. The oldest living human known to date is only 122. But yet 2,000 shell companies have CEOs or directors that are older than the oldest person alive. There's a company out there that has a director that is listed at 942 years old. What? There are 2,000... Listen, look at this. It found 21 million red flag associations with shell companies that could be used to enable financial crimes. From ancient directors to bullshit addresses. 2,200 companies have directors aged 123 years and above. What the fuck? It's like, okay, so if they can find this, how hard is it for these guys to go check out those fucking places? Oh. Now, why don't those guys do that? Look at this next thing. Look at this. They estimate that there's 1.6 trillion laundered annually from all of these. So from all of these shell companies, they estimate 1.6 trillion laundered annually. What? Is this not something that every government should go after? There's a $1.6 trillion fucking crime going on and no one cares. There's a $1.6 trillion crime going on annually, and our government and our regulators don't seem to give a fuck. Instead of writing laws to go ahead and say, hey, we can now look at this. Hey, other government, we can look at this. What did we show you before? They're never going to stop, because why? You have small companies, small countries that are going to go out there and continuously do this. They're going to say, we need to make money to run our corrupt government that can't stop overspending. And what we're going to do is we're going to allow these giant corporations like Microsoft to come in, and they're going to make a shell company, and the shell company here is going to have 15 employees. But according to Microsoft, they make $15 billion a year in a factory that does nothing but print CDs. They make CDs, they print CDs, and they put Microsoft on it. And they make $15 billion a year. Huh. Meanwhile, Microsoft was funneling money there to get out of paying $30 billion in taxes. A small factory that just burned Windows CD was evaluated at $6 billion. Yeah, we know. So they say 1.6 trillion is laundered annually out of there. That's a lot of tax money. But they make sure to get every single penny you guys make. It's a lot of fucking tax money, dude. Now, if you come down, keep reading all this stuff. Yeah, I'll go ahead and post this up here, though, just so people can keep reading along. Or, you know, if I go ahead and move on from an article and you want to keep reading more. But, I mean, this just talks... I mean, this is just a fucking gong show. Like I said, this talks about different Chinese companies, which we're going to get into here in a minute. Because if it talks about the Panama Papers... Here's the craziest thing. The Panama Papers came out. They showed the biggest financial fraud in the world. And no one cared. Nothing happened. No one cared. No one was arrested. No one gave a fuck. They showed bank accounts, bank records. No one cared. The fact that nothing came out from those, the fact that there was no arrest made from those, blows my fucking mind. But I just wanted to show you guys that they think 1.6 trillion a year is going out through these shell companies. And people say, where's Moass money? Where's all this money? How are they going to afford to pay us? Well, they afford to take 1.6 trillion a year. 1.6 trillion is a lot for a pretty big squeeze. And that's only 1 year's worth for them. But I just want to show you guys, I mean, dude, this is insanity. 2,000? There's 21 million shell companies? 21 million shell companies? Jesus fuck. That are all in... Most of them are in Cape Town, which I showed you. Georgetown, the biggest joke ever. Fucking Cayman Islands. Now, I wanted to show you this because this year, I know it just started. You're going to see insolvency of banks. 2024 is going to get very, very, very interesting. You have so many banks right now that are living off life support. They're living off these federal loans. They're laying off people left and right. And you have people like Truance that just took a $5 billion hit in Q4. You're going to see a lot of these people now having this commercial real estate. This commercial real estate number is going to blow your fucking mind here. There's no way. There's no way these banks are going to be able to recover through this year. There's fucking no way. But the reason I wanted to show Dario is he's been talking about them since October. He's talked about Truist Bank. And before we get into the thing, they took, like I said, they just took a $5 billion hit. They're pretty much insolvent. If you break down all of their financial records, they're in a lot of trouble. And there's tons of banks like this that are living off of these loans. Now, I want you guys to look at this. This jumps up every single week by about 10 to 14 billion. That's a lot of money. This is up to 161 billion borrowed by banks now. And it all needs to be returned in March. It all needs to be returned in March. The Fed said they have no plans if anybody can't pay it. So you better fucking, basically, they're like, pay it. We're not extending shit. We don't give a fuck. We have no backup plan. You better just have this shit ready to go. Well, we already know these banks are not going to all have it. So this is going to be a problem come March. But you have a ton of banks like this that are living off of these loans. Now, the reason I want to bring this one up is today, well, like, here you go. You had a goodwill impairment charge. They took a $5.1 billion loss. These guys are paying for a lot of assets at high prices. And then they're getting, after they're basically about time to sell them, these assets are losing value. Rapid value. Now, one of the things I was talking about is the commercial real estate. And this is where these guys are going to keep taking the amount of hits that they cannot afford to take. Now, if you look over here, Truist to Shutter, they announced yesterday, I keep getting, my days are all messed up. They announced that they're going to shut 72 branches across 6 states as nearly a $1 billion cost reduction. Now, we just saw that Wells Fargo is doing that, Bank of America. You're nonstop seeing banks do $1 billion reductions. That is fucking huge. That's not like a small reduction in your company. You're over a $1 billion reduction. These guys, like I said, these banks are going to have a ton of problems, and you're going to see money market funds break $7 trillion. Mark this video, by the end of the year, money market funds will have over $7 trillion in assets. If I had to guess a number, I would currently say about 7.3 to 7.2. So, if you look over here, one of the things that's going on now is this is a way that a lot of people don't understand that the government is they're helping you, but they're not doing it to help you. You getting help is just kind of like a side thing, because they're looking at it right now going, 40% of people are just going to default on these. You're already seeing it now. And those numbers are going to get higher and higher as you guys, like I showed you. The cost of fucking living is getting look at this. It's getting ridiculous. It's not going to go away. Just because inflation went down to 3% doesn't mean the costs stop going up. The costs just go up at 3%. They just go up at a slower rate now. But guess what? That's already on, like I said, it's already starting to go back into the uptrend. So, yay. So the more that the cost of living and all this stuff, it's going to get worse and worse and worse for these guys. Well, Biden announced that they're going to give up another $5 billion in debt relief. And then shortly after, what is announced? Well, here's another key bank to cut another 1,000 jobs as net income drops by $950 million. Again, you're seeing these banks taking hits and hits and harder. But back to this. Carlyle buys $415 million student loan portfolio from Truist. And that was today. So, here's a $415 million quick little bailout by this company, Carlyle. Now Carlyle will end up having them get redone by the Biden administration. They'll be part of the relief effort, and then they'll give all these loans, and all this shit will be forgiven, and suddenly it will get off this bank's book because this bank is in trouble. This bank is in a lot of trouble. And then, as he pointed out today, crazy timing. Right, a couple days right after they announced we're gonna do $5 billion and some relief. Boom, we sold $500 million or $415 million in our portfolio of loans. All the shitty ones that nobody's paying back. So basically the 40%, because if you look at their portfolio, this wasn't their whole thing. This was about half of it. So you mean 40% of these people are not paying it back? Which goes ahead and tells you they're sold all of their shitty ones that nobody's paying back to this company right after Biden says we'll go ahead and give out some relief for these exact fucking bad shitty loans. Crazy. So these are really more going through bank bailouts. And like I said, these aren't going to be able to keep going on forever. These guys are literally passing potatoes and potatoes around. And these things are huge. And the government's just sitting there like, well, just go ahead and pretend this potato doesn't exist and throw this one in this closet. We'll forgive this one, throw this one in this closet, and throw this. Well, eventually, what the fuck? Now you have assets that aren't paid for everywhere. You cannot sit there and just go ahead and eventually throw away bad loans forever, and nobody takes a loss, and then we do. The government, they're not just going to keep taking fucking losses up the ass or leaving things. This next election, I don't want to... Everybody gets all crabby if I talk politics. This next election is going to be very interesting. Let's just say that. This next election is going to be insanely interesting on what type of things get addressed going forward. Because if there's a certain man that gets put in, I think there's going to be a lot of changes. A lot of changes with Wall Street. A lot of changes with banks. But we'll see. We'll see. Like I said, they're already trying to water down Endgame 3 rules because they know if they have to abide by those rules by 2025, that JP Morgan will collapse. There's nothing else about it. JP Morgan does not have enough of a percentage left in their deposits because it's going to continuously flood out. By the time 2025 comes, they won't have enough to back their assets, their loans, their derivatives, all their stuff to make sure that they have enough collateral on hand and in the reserves as well. JP Morgan, JP Morgan, when Kramer said it was, JP Morgan's good to go. It's because if they had any type of bank run in any way, shape, or form, because most of the people inside of JP Morgan, 60% of their total deposits are uninsured. And if people realize that JP Morgan's in trouble and those 60% say, fuck this, I'm going to leave. My money's not insured here. That will be the end of JP Morgan. They are shuddering on those people, banking on those people not going to a money market fund and eventually those people are going to look over and say, I have a lot of money, because obviously if it's under 250,000, you're good to go. So these guys have a lot of money that's uninsured that's eventually going to make its way into these money market funds. And these guys are fucked. Again, 60% of loan borrowers will make payments. Most of them don't care. So why the hell would you come over here and say, let me buy these loans that are probably not going to get paid back? It's a bailout. It's a joke. New way to bail them out, take these toxic dump assets off their hands that nobody's buying back, and then have Biden go ahead and forgive you. You're all good to go. this I was also trying to put up because I was just trying to show you guys, every time I have a show or a stream, it's this every single time. More layoffs, more layoffs. Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Citigroup reduced their workforce by 17,700 people. Again, these banks are not just cutting off, they're not just shutting down a small amount. 72 banks, 1,000 people, 17,000 people. You're not firing and you're not doing billion-dollar reductions left and right. And then I already showed you guys how much they're going to have to pay in severance packages. The amount of severance packages these banks are going to have to pay out is in the billions and billions and billions. And those are going to be losses. They're going to take even more losses from the severance packages. Where are we at? Oh, yeah. So yesterday, money market funds crossed $6 trillion for the first time in history. By this time next year, this will cross $7.2 trillion. People are, like I said, there's no point in being in a bank. Why the fuck would I be in a bank that's giving me 0.1% when I can go get 5.8, 5.7? There's no reason to. There's zero reason other than to just instantly make a payment on something to be in a bank at this point. You're literally losing money with inflation, having your money sit in a bank, gaining zero interest. Literally 0.1. Some of these fucking banks, like I said, the amount of money, banks have become obsolete. They're pointless, other than the fact that they have the ability to give you a loan. But at that point, you get a better loan at a credit union. You're going to get a better rate at a credit union. You technically, so most of the time, don't even need as high of a credit score. Oh, sorry, the dog is moving my chair. So, once again, people are going to start, and most of those credit unions give a better rate on their deposits as well. They're not giving you 0.1%. They'll give you 2%, an actual percent or two. Compared, like I said, there's no reason to be in these top 10 banks anymore. Other than the fact that maybe you have your loan there and you just don't want to move it, which I understand. If you don't want to refinance right now, who the fuck would want to? Why would you? Especially if you got it at a good rate. Why the hell would you refinance now? But I'm just saying, credit cards, things we can get paid off for these guys right now. The more we can get paid off, the more of these assets, the more we can move out of these deposits. As you guys are going to see, these guys are, this next year and this year, they're going to start taking hits. They're going to start taking hits. Each quarter, their earnings are going to be losses, and mainly going to be from commercial real estate. Now, one of the things I want to show you guys, because this shit's happening around the world, and it's collapsing everywhere. China, we're going to get into in a second, is in a whole world of hurt. China right now is, not even counting their real estate, China's pretty fucked right now. If you guys look over here, though, I wanted to get into Europe for 1 second here, because this article came out a while ago and talked about him getting, Freedom of Information Acts, and I really highly recommend reading this because he is pretty spot on with a lot of these mechanics. He's spot on with the way a lot of these guys get around rules, regulations. I just send it in the chat as well. If you're listening, click on that if you want to read along. But one of the things that this talks about all the things that these guys do, naked shorting, all sorts of stuff. Well, one of the things that it talks about that I thought was very interesting is it talks about FTDs over in Europe, because there's ways that they can get around reporting things, which we've already talked about many times, that they can go over in Europe and other regulatory bodies and not have to report this and report that. So there's ways that they use shell companies to get around reporting certain assets and this and that. Classic, criminal shit. Well, one of the things that this talks about is, it talks about the failure to deliver, on settlements. And now this number, I don't want everybody to go crazy and go, oh my God, there's this much in equities. This isn't just equity totals. This is everything. But still, it's an unimaginable number. It is beyond ridiculous. Like, what the fuck? Failure to deliver on securities is 576 trillion. Rate of settlement fails based on value is 50% in 2022. Now, before I keep going, I want you to read the bottom number here because that's even more insane. Settlements fail due to lack of securities or lack of cash. Total value, $671 trillion. What? What? Reported 576 trillion euros in settlement fails of securities in 2022. That is a Bloomberg, which has a indirect link to the DTC. Now, I want you guys to understand something before I keep going with these numbers. This does not count the securities that are sold in the United States because of that they don't need to report. So this number is higher, but we don't know the true number. But with all of this going on now, you're seeing all of those problems happening over in Europe, and we already know all the problems going on, all those problems going over in the European market. Well, now the European market is starting to think we're fucked too. European central banks ask lenders to monitor social media for early signs of bank runs because they're freaking out. They know that any second a bank run can happen because everybody is waking up to the criminality of what are called banks. Now, hold on one second. This is why I always show this quote from Thomas Jefferson, because these things are, because no standing army can do the amount of destruction that can happen that these banks can do, because they can destroy and collapse an entire nation. Everyone. And then on top of that, now it can go around the entire world. Thomas Jefferson, when he talked about banks, one of the things that he talked about is how banks are going to be more dangerous than any standing army. And it's one of the best quotes out there, and it's one of the most true quotes out there. These guys can control your government. They control everything. They're reckless by the trillions. Again, none of you guys heard of trillions. None of you guys heard of trillions years ago. But yet, every time I come on and I make a video, what are we doing? Hey, by the way, they're stealing 1.6 trillion over here. By the way, they just stole $5 trillion over there. Now, I showed you guys in 2020, they printed $16 trillion, and everybody asked, where did it go? Well, when I can show you 4 avenues a year for 3 years, and I showed you how they were taking out almost $3.5 trillion a year for 3 years, and that's just what I found. Who knows whether the 4 trillion went? But it's all going offshore. It's all going to the same people. There are 5 people I showed you last week. There are 5 people that net value is now worth $900 billion. 5 people. 5 people have more money than how many countries in the world? 5 people. Almost an insane amount. Like I said, the corruption at this point is unfucking believable. It is to a point where I just can't believe anybody's even allowing this shit. I can't believe, this should be shit where people should be going fucking, what is this? What is this? What is this? 671 trillion settlement fails due to lack of securities or lack of cash. Pfft. Okay. This is from Clearstream Banking, from their settlement fail report in 2022. If you want to Google it, pull up the report and read it as well. But like I said, now they're monitoring everything over there because they're going to have the same problem. Now, if you go look over in China, it's even worse. Now, in China is considering tapping into $278 billion in offshore funds just to stabilize its stock market. Their stock market is at an all-time low. Nobody wants to buy anything. Every one of their fucking companies is just a toxic. No one wants their shit. It's just garbage. They need to go off just to inject money into their own market. Well, okay, so now you're going to have government buying all these securities up. Great job. China funds. Now what do? They're also telling people now, they're telling all their people, you can no longer, we won't let you invest into ETFs, and we're trying to limit you to investing into American companies and ETFs that are involved in the American market. We basically want you guys now to only invest in Chinese companies. We need to get our stock market back, and we're going to go ahead and ban you in every single way, shape, and form other than to buy our stuff. And then what did they do? They banned short selling. They're going after banks that were attacking their market worldwide, which we already know who the banks are. So China, one of the reasons why Phase 6 did not work is I did not realize that China actually was worse off than we were. So when you're worse off than we are, how the fuck are you going to tell the United States what to do? Well, it turns out Europe is even worse than we are. And they're even worse than China is. So what the fuck are they going to do? Nothing. On top of that, if you look at China's debt compared to the United States debt and their GDP, at this point, compared to every single US dollar, China now is only making about 20 cents compared to America's making 40 cents. So their debt is even hurting China. China's in a lot of problems. Now we're not even talking that their entire commercial real estate is worse than the United States. China, if you're falling in for any of those like real China stock hype run thing, eat all that, like just I can't tell you what to do, but just be careful. Just be very, very careful if you're doing any of that type of stuff. But I'm showing you this to show you that all of these guys is corruption, their plans, their greed. It's by the trillions, so where no matter what you guys think, they can't hide this forever. You can't. It's collapsing everybody in the entire world's economy. It's collapsing everybody in the world's middle class. You're destroying it, which is collapsing all of your companies, which is collapsing all of their tax revenue, which is collapsing GDP. We're not producing anything. Everywhere, everything is going to shit really fucking quickly. And in 2024, I don't really know how these people, because the problem is all these people they need to bail out now is by the $500 billion. Well, you can't just keep bailing people out by $500 billion a fucking year. Like, what is going on? One of the things that happened here in December, and again, how is this not financial treason? Also, this is one of the things that they know that they need to start to correct. One of the things they know that they need to get under control, because this is something they can't prevent from going to federal court and federal judges and things like that, because this is against basically what they want to start doing is they're going to have all of these treasury markets have to go start clearing through the FDIC. They no longer want these guys to be clearing through all this other shit because they know all this corruption's going on, and they know too many failed to settlements are happening in the treasury market. Well, just in an example, this is the all-time high, but just to show you how out of control this is. In 2003, obviously this is 20 years ago, so this is a long time, but it's just the record, so why I'm bringing it up, because the numbers are ridiculous. The failure to deliver on the 10-year actually reached $1.62 trillion. That's a government security that you're issuing, and basically it's fraud. It's fraud of a government-issued security. That's federal right there. That's a big fucking crime. The fact that this isn't, like he said, how the fuck is naked shorting or getting involved in treasuries? How is this not treason against the United States? So what they're doing is they're bringing this over. They're going to now start doing clearing. Well, if you look over here, this came out in September. Hedge funds are risking financial turmoil by shorting $600 billion in treasuries. You got these guys doing this. FTD's going up on them. Like I said, these guys, this is why I call them financial terrorists, because they don't give a fuck. And they're just literally destroying every single aspect of the United States. And this is shit I don't know how do you ever recover from a $34 trillion deficit? Debt. How do you ever pay that fucking off when you're paying $2.2 trillion starting next year alone on that debt? How the fuck are you ever going to get all this? Like, they sit there and talk about, well, this. But yet, by every metrics, God, I hate the fucking government. Dude, they try and sweet spin everything. It's just like, I'll get to this in a second when we get into the CNS thing, because this hack actually is a pretty big deal. Equilend, we'll get back into them in a minute here. But like I said, these guys, these 10 companies, and it's always the same fucking 10 companies. It's always these guys. Always these guys. These guys going after your retirement funds. The fact that these 10 banks stole $38 billion that should have went into all your guys' retirements. Why would you ever do business with these guys again? They stole almost $40 billion from people's retirement funds. Like, this is nuts, dude. And that's just what they caught from in 2018 from these guys. They're stealing more from other people that didn't sue them. So like I said, this is fucking insanity. Now, I want you guys to understand the total of this, the stock lending program and all this. So they basically borrow all this, charge these guys this, and then in return have a 1.75 trillion market value. And now these guys, now remember this, because this is key when we get into this in a minute. Equilend is in charge of the security lending program. Equilend does $2 trillion in security lending. Okay? Equilend does $2 trillion in security lending. Now, one of the ways that these market makers are able to get away with all of this bullshit is a lot of people do not understand failure to delivers happen in the CNS level. This happens in the DTCC system of the CNS program, which I've gone over before. Well, one of the things, now you can come on here, you can go ahead and look at this here quick. So my fucking place, this is on SEC. This is the SEC government's website. This is talks about questions and answers. This talks about the CNS program. Talks about regulation, division, and blah. Gets into a whole bunch of shit that they're going to change. All this stuff. Well, I made a video on this a long time ago, the CNS program, and I just want to show you guys something because it's pretty fucked up. And I just learned even more about how the CNS program is intertwined with your pension funds. And more of a joke than you could ever imagine. This is also how they get around regulation show. If you want to read a lot of stuff, read this stuff, because they think we're stupid. And then they tell you the answers. And it's like, if you really read about them and you read more of the questions, you'll understand. It's a big fucking joke of a Ponzi scheme. Now, why am I bringing this up? Wall Street stock lending platform crashes in ransomware attack. Equilend says it may take days to recover from cyber incident. This was reported yesterday. I'm sorry, this was actually reported today. I apologize. Again, I'm all messed up with the dates here. Now, firm is at heart of Wall Street security lending industry. Now, I'm going to show you guys how fucked up this is. Okay? Let's do my sketch pad quick. So, you have the CNS program here, okay? This is run by the DTC, which we already know is made up of who? It is made up of banks. It's made up of bankers. Let's just write bankers. But it's from the same criminals. It's from the same criminals, made up of the same criminals from Equilend, okay? So Equilend is now in charge of the stock borrowing program. Well, let's not say they're not in charge of the stock borrowing program, but they have a stock borrowing program platform. They have the #1 stock borrowing program platform, and it processes 2 trillion a month. Okay. So, Equilend is made up of who? The same fucking bankers. The same fucking bankers that are on the DTCC. Now watch this, because I didn't go over this before. Part of the agreement in this lawsuit, it wasn't just 500 million. They need to reform all of Equilend, because what they ended up saying is you have all of these bank board members as part of the agreement, Equilend needs to do basically massive reforms over the next 5 years, limiting the number of board seats held by each bank. Because this is how you prevent collusion and inappropriate sharing of information, and these guys, again, controlling everything because they're their own regulators. So currently what you had is Equilend over here. Now watch how fucking stupid this gets. So you have Equilend over here where you have 2 trillion in assets of stock borrowing that you can fucking stock borrow up, right? Now, if you come over here and you read this, and then we're going to break into this real quick. So, does the NSC stock borrow program create counterfeit shares? Does the CNS program create counterfeit shares? Okay, now I'm just going to summarize this because I'm not going to read all this fucking... I've already went over this and broke it down hardcore for you in those videos. So basically what this does is it's called netting, okay? Now they think we're too stupid to figure out and actually read the reports that have been conducted about these exact programs. Now, according to the FCC website, what happens is if I am a company and I need to borrow shares, I borrow from the CNS program and I'll have one long position. They do not care about the amount of equity. They don't care about the security. They don't care how many shares of the security you want. They don't give a fuck. It's called net settlement. They care about the value of those shares. So yes, you'll be short or long in this certain security, and eventually you'll need to cover it. But there's exemptions and exemptions and exemptions, which we always get into. Of course, there's market maker exemptions, bona fide market maker exemptions. We'll get into all that in a minute. But one of the things I wanted to show you in this stupid-ass program, so what they do is they'll say, hey, there's failure to delivers inside the CNS fucking program. And then they're called failure to receives. Now, in 2010, they passed a law that said the NSCC, who used to be in charge of saying, all right, you owe this much in this security. Let's say I'm, just to make this very simple, I'm a bank and I need to borrow 1,000 shares of fucking whatever, AMC, okay? I go into the CNS program. So it's valued at 4,000. I'm going to be short in the system, 4,000. But they don't care if these shares change. They care about the value of these shares. Okay? So it's a complete fucking gong show. And as long as this value of these shares can keep getting passed around by other banks, I'm making this too complicated before I just break this down. Just to make this simple. So I'm short 1,000 shares in CNS program, okay? I go out and I borrow 1,000 shares. I'm now short 1,000 in the CNS program. Well, what they'll do is they'll say, you have this amount of time to pay it back, okay? If you don't pay it back, it's a FTD, or it's called a failure to to receive. Okay? Now, if I get a failure to receive, that means back in the day, the CNS or the NSCC would come up to me as regulators, okay, and say, "Hey, you have 1,000. You're short 1,000 in AMC. You have an FTR of 1,000 shares. You need to you have 2 days to fix it, okay? You have 2 days to fix it, or we'll kick you out of the program. You won't be a member. Blah blah blah. There's repercussions." Well, they took that away in 2010. They made a rule that the NSCC is no longer in charge to do this. They're no longer in charge to say, "Hey, you have to cover these buy-ins." Okay? So the NSCC no longer has the ability. Look at, because after should NSCC buy-ins all fail to deliver in the CNS, what happens? We'll get into that in a second. The NSC, after that law was passed, the NSCC does not have the authority to execute buy-ins on half of its members anymore. It has no ability forcing closeouts or fails, and they increase blah, blah, blah. Just to show you how ridiculous this gets. Now watch this. The reason I bring up the stock borrowing program, the reason I bring up all of this bullshit, the reason I bring up the CNS program is if you watch this. Now this talks about market makers in the CNS program, and if you come here, you can go ahead and look at it. This is right on their website right here. One of the things that the market makers can do is they can go ahead and take a short position in a stock, and they can hold it for basically an unlimited time with an exemption until trading is sufficient. Here you go. While CNS deliveries are made automatically using the member's depository positions. So basically what this means is if somebody goes in and I want to borrow them, it will automatically take out the shares worth that I have deposited in my netting account, and it'll give it to another member. But members can exempt certain short positions to avoid segregation violations and effectively meet other delivery needs, which means as long as they have an order for a share that they borrowed from the CNS program, they don't have to pay it back. So they can always say they have an order for shares. So they can be exempt from taking from this. Now, when you go ahead and you look over here at this a little bit more, where the fuck did... What happens... Let me show you this. So this was in 2009. Okay? It said that in 2009, when they had authority, there was a notice of 6,000 of intent to buy-ins were filled a day. Now, this has probably skyrocketed to millions. That's what I want you guys to understand. This is why I want to bring this up to you guys. This is why I'm going to show you what they're doing with pension funds. This is how they're fucking you. So basically, what they'll do, and now I want you to read this next part. So they had 6,000 notices of intent to buy in or filled a day. Now, this was in 2009. Out of those 6,000 that they sent out, 20 were actually like, "Oh, I'm sorry, let me take care of that." 5,980 people told them to go fuck themselves. "I'll fill it when I'm ready." Because you have nobody there. There's nobody that can tell me when I have to do anything because we're in charge of both. Now watch. It gets even more stupid. So, it talks about when they don't have the ability to, let's say, okay, so let me show you an example. Let me make this out here so you can understand this. So what this is it's a netting process, okay? So what a netting process is, and I'll only do like 5 banks just to make this super easy for you guys. There's obviously a lot more banks, so there's a lot more squares in the CNS program, but I'm just making this very simple. You have bank 1, bank 2, 3, 4, and bank 5. And then inside this, you have the DTCC vault called the CNS program. Okay, this is the CNS shares. Now, each one of these banks In between now, we'll have what they have is their depository position. So when they entered this program, they had to deposit shares or whatever they had for collateral to be involved inside of this. Okay, so each one of these banks now have another square here. Now this is their deposited shares, their deposited collateral. Okay, so what's going on is you have bank number one will come in and they will say, hey, I want to borrow from the CNS program 1,000 shares, okay? So bank number one's going for 1,000 shares. What the CNS program does is it'll go over to, let's say, bank number two, bank number three, bank number four, bank number five. It will go through each one of these depository systems or their depository shares, and it'll say it has the locate and it'll fill the value for them, okay? So now all of a sudden it'll take out of these little vaults, these mini vaults, and it'll say that this now goes transferred into the CNS, and now they can fill this share, okay? Well, here's the problem. Let's say this order is 1,000 shares. This guy says there's not enough to cover it, okay? It still fills the fucking 1,000 shares. So what it'll do, it'll still fill the 1,000 shares in the CNS program. But this guy now will be short. Let's say it only fills 200 shares. So he's short 800 shares. Okay? And he needs to fill back 800 shares into the CNS program, so the CNS program then can refill these guys' fucking little vaults, and everything's hunky-dory. Okay? If he does not fill these in by T+2, guess what? They're supposed to issue a buy-in, which is like issuing a margin. Okay? So they're supposed to issue a margin / buy-in. Well, this guy right here gets his buy-in, his little margin call, and he goes, who the fuck's going to do anything? Who's going to enforce it? Go fuck yourself. I'm going to crumple my buy-in and throw it away. As you can see, 20 notices out of 6,000 were filled. Well, imagine this by the millions. How many are not getting filled? There's no one there to tell me anything. There's no one there to charge me, and there's no one there to give me a fucking ticket. Well, watch what happens. This is why I bring this up, because this is the most important fucking part of the whole thing. Let's say this guy says, go fuck yourself, okay? 800 shares. It needs to make the CNS program whole. Guess what it does? It borrows from the stock borrow program. Any delivery that they cannot be made is then additionally borrowed from the stock borrowing program to temporarily cover this. So if you have pieces of shit FTDing over here by the whatever, and there's nobody to enforce it because there's nobody that can do anything anymore. They passed a law that nobody can do anything. Nobody can hold them accountable. So nobody can do margins. These guys are telling them when they get their margin calls, basically, fuck off. What the fuck, dude? And then when all else fails, they borrow. Oh, here you go. Here's some CNS things. This entire... I want you guys to read this document. I mean, they tell you about it all in here. All the corruption. How they can just borrow it from this and get around regulation show. And then they go over here and borrow from the CNS program. And if they can't fucking fix their CNS program, then they take it from the stock borrowing program. And then they go ahead and borrow it over here. So basically what they're doing is they have a program over here for exemptions for a certain amount of time. When those exemptions run out, they borrow from the stock borrowing program because they have certain exemptions for the stock borrowing program. And they're passing the potato between each program that has an exemption to go ahead ahead and bypass and give themselves more time, and then they just send it to a shell company who then goes into that program, who then goes back into that, and that's why these things are in levels that you guys cannot fucking comprehend. I mean, this is honestly fucking nuts. And guess who's in charge of it all? The same fucking 10 banks. The same 10 banks. The same fucking people who are in charge of Equilend that have $2 trillion of stock that they can just go ahead. Think about this, you guys. Why did I say this? If I owe, and I'm bank number 1, and I owe into this, and I can just go ahead and dip into my fucking stock borrow platform to fill this, and then just go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth with exemptions. The hell? But this is why, to bring up these programs, you have things like ETFs. Everybody goes, why didn't these prices go up when ETFs came around? Why is Bitcoin dropping when ETFs are coming around? Because think about it. When AMC and all these meme stocks came around, what's the first thing they did? They did ETFs. Why? Because if I make ETFs, these ETFs apparently go buy stock, but what do? They buy the stock OTC. So what we're going to do is we're going to tell the market, hey, these ETFs have to go buy all these stocks. They have to go buy all these shares. So the price is going to raise. Retail jumps in, and then retail gets fucked the second the ETF opens. Why? They go buy the stock over the counter. They go buy it in dark pools. So when they go buy it and the ETF opens up, guess what? There was no price action involved. And then they let you guys pump in a ton of liquidity, and they shorted it all right back down, and now they can control the price. They can control the buys, so they'll wait and can do what they do. They fix the price and then they let the ETFs now be used as locates. So think about this. Let's say I go make an ETF with AMC, and there's 10 million shares in there. Well, I will go out and I buy 10 million shares at the float, but then I buy it over OTC, so none of that was affected. The stock price didn't move up, and now I'm able to use those shares as locates. How many different times for how many different people, and then how many of those people now are able to take those shares and now lend them out through the stock borrowing program. That is why ETFs are fucking bullshit. That is why ETFs with Bitcoin are fucking bullshit. It's why it's dropped under 40K. Because the second the ETF came out, they went and bought 10,000, 15,000 Bitcoin over the counter, so it didn't affect Bitcoin's actual stock price. And there you go. Now their fuckery's at foot, because guess what? They also own the exchange. That's what I'm saying. Like, this stuff is beyond stupid. The fact that but at least with this lawsuit, because this is one of the things that we need to start doing with lawsuits, and this is one of the reasons why I'm talking about this. Because, like I said, with going through this lawsuit that I've been talking about last time, with speaking with Dave, one of the things we need to start doing if we do go down this route, if we do get a lawsuit, it's not just, hey, we need a lawsuit and we need to just say, hey, we want this money and move on. No, we need to do what these guys did, and we need to go ahead and say, hey, you need to reform. You need to do things to prevent collusion. You need to limit the number of board seats held by banks. You need to change the system as part of the agreement. If you can't do that, we'll sue you for that and the money, and then even more money. So, like I said, if we're going to go this route, I want to make sure we're going this right route properly. We know the right people, because like Dave said, the hardest part about this is having them go through, the period right away and see if there's enough to get past motion to dismiss. So you need to have enough evidence. And I mean, we could show them evidence. Obviously, we have tons and tons of evidence. And one of the things I was asking about was, like the buy button being removed. Is that not evidence that there's obviously collusion going on inside of these meme stocks? We have We have, government reported documents with GameStop report that this collusion's going on. We can show them the FTDs in APE and AMC and the price action. Where did they go? How did they get filled with no price movement? What is happening? Like, there's plenty of things where the problem is like I said, we gotta do this right. I don't want to be like Ethan and those children and rush through this and get it thrown out, because if we don't do this properly, it will be a waste of time and resources, and it could fuck us up in the future for future lawsuits. But like I said, guys, this is stuff that we need to start looking through to see if that might be a route we want to go through before all the stuff starts fucking just collapsing. But now what you have is, like I said, you're going to start seeing these guys get clearing through all of these ways that they didn't have before. You're going to have a lot of these guys losing a lot of these revenue streams. Once again, this was billions and billions of dollars that these guys were stealing from pension funds a year to be able to use as collateral. Well, that's coming to an end as well. So there's a lot of situations this year that are going to change compared to next year, that these guys we're using that. Like I said, these guys are already over leveraged, and they have so many bombs that are about to come. It's not even funny. At the meantime, U.S. debt has now went up almost $100 billion since the last time I reported on it. We clearly have no signs of slowing down, and by the end of the year, that means we will be on pace for $36 trillion in debt. Now, when that happens, and they need to start renewing the $8.2 trillion, like I said, we're going to end up paying about $2.4, $2.5 trillion in interest by the end of next year. It's just going to be insanity. I don't know. How can you, as politicians and people, us, you're throwing trillions of our tax dollars away on nothing, on your inability to spend and make the country better. You're spending to make yourselves richer. At what point do we say that this is, like I said, like, good grief, what is happening on a daily basis in the United States is way less than what they got revolution started over. Way less. This is nuts. But at the same time, I want to show you guys just what's going to happen here in the real estate. Blackstone defaulted on a New York City office tower. It's up to a 50% discount. Well, when you have Blackstone defaulting on $308 million mortgages, this happened last year, that they defaulted and then it being sold off for basically a fraction. The real estate market is going to get dismantled. Commercial real estate values will suffer a $480 billion wipeout next year. And that's after following $590 billion loss in 2023. So you're basically you're going to have $1 trillion in loss in value. $1 trillion in loss in value on these guys' properties. That's a lot of collateral that these guys are losing. That's a lot of collateral these guys are losing over the next 2 years. That's a lot of losses that aren't even hitting their books yet, that are about to get smashed down. 1.5 trillion wall of debt is looming for commercial real estate properties. In the next 2 years, 1.5 trillion of U.S. commercial real estate debt comes due for repayment before the end of 2025. Good luck. These guys are going to take hundreds and hundreds of billions in losses. Hundreds of billions in losses. They will not be able to recover from this bomb. They won't. There is no fucking way they can recover from this bomb. Like I said, you're going to continuously see 50, 60%, 50, 60% losses. And they're going to get worse and worse the more these guys hold on to these and the longer that these guys wait. Now, billionaire CEO sees $1 trillion in commercial real estate defaults coming for a very, very ugly market over the next 2 years. So, guys, this commercial real estate is a lot bigger bomb than any of you guys can imagine. This is going to kill off tons and tons of these banks. Tons of these banks. Delinquency spikes on loans tied to office buildings. It's back up to 5.8. We're getting to massive, massive levels. I don't know what these guys are going to do. I really don't know what these guys are going to start doing. It's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. And what's a new thing that's happened that they didn't plan on again? Working from home. Too many of these companies are saying, fuck it, we're never going to go back. We're never going to go back to offices because we can save millions by never having to pay for an office building. So much money so much money that it's not worth going back to, you guys. It's not worth going back to tons of these people. On top of that, you're seeing a ton of these office buildings. Again, who's opening new companies? Nobody, while other ones are closing. You're seeing tons of these office buildings with 60% vacancy. Nobody's renting them out. Nobody is. They are going to take a massive, massive hit this year. It's going to get insane. And on top of that, the government themselves is going to take an $8.2 trillion hit on debt. So it's going to be a lot harder for the government to bail them out this year. You will see banks go under this year, and it's going to get pretty nasty. The fact that they're borrowing up to $161 billion just to stay afloat. So guys, just let this shit play out. Let this shit do its. Greed is always going to be the number one killer in any kind of empire, no matter what. And these guys are mafias. They live off greed. It's just a matter of time until it goes down. Record number of office to apartment conversions planned in 2024. Basically, the only people now that are buying up these offices at 50%, like I told you guys, is going to be people that are going to try and turn these into rental properties. They think that you're going to have an insane amount of these rental properties going inside of these offices this year, because who else are they going to sell it to? Because this is the problem. When you have nobody trying to open up companies or corporations or any kind of companies, the only buyer market you have currently are people that are going to try and turn these into actually apartment complexes, retirement homes, old folks' homes. So, like I said, they're going to take a 50-60% hit on all of this 1.5 trillion, because there is no demand. The demand is not there. 50-60% is you're going to see this. Like I said, they're going to take 500-600 billion in losses. How do you recover from that? I could tell you the banks don't have that. But once again, if you didn't hear this, this is him once again trying to bribe a senator, trying to bribe somebody, threatening them. Please listen to this on YouTube if you haven't been able to. But I'm kind of curious to see what happens more with this Equilend, because once again, I showed you how Equilend affects the CNS program. So if you see a lot of failure to delivers, one of the things I expect to see on the next report for failure to delivers around this time is FTDs will skyrocket on the next report for this period. Alrighty. Does anyone have any questions though? I mean, I went over pretty much everything I wanted to go over here today. Go see how the wife's doing. Sure she's all right up there and doesn't need anything. Any questions at all? Alrighty. Well, thank you guys for listening. I appreciate it. I'm gonna get going here. Thank you guys. Have a good day.